since Triple H has come in on board, people are holding on to their titles now forever. You have Roman Reigns almost coming up to 1,000 days now of being the undisputed champion. You have the Usos, the tag team champions. They've held it for like 500, 600, whatever days they've held it. You have Gunther, who's held the Intercontinental belt, and he's had it for months now. So we had more stability, like in the Golden Era. Remember back in the 80s when Hogan had the belt forever and it was a big deal when he lost the belt? This is what they're priming towards again, and it's pretty cool. Like they're going back retro for this.
See, I see what you're saying, but to me, then what it creates is just predictability, right? In that you just know you're not going to flip Reigns at some weird time, right? And I can remember back in the 70s, right, where, there would be a guy would win a belt, but it was more like, I guess at almost what you would consider house shows or whatever, right? That would be worked into the script. In the week in between, some dude came from out of nowhere or got the push, won and, beat Dusty Rhodes in his hometown, not in Dusty's hometown. And then Dusty comes back at the keel and boom, and wins it back, right? I just kind of feel like, yeah, it's nice to have stability, but stability is boring. And the one thing you don't want in WWE is boring, right? I could, if you don't like Roman Reigns, and I don't really care about Roman Reigns one way or the other, but you can pick whichever guy you want to say, whether it's your guy or not your guy. If your guy isn't Roman Reigns and he's been there for almost 3 years now, at some point you're like, I just don't want to watch this guy anymore. Especially when, there's all these other guys that I think deserve the shot. And they're never going to give it to him, right? So I like the instability a little bit more than I like the idea of we've got our guy. Look, I also don't, again, I'm not as involved in this as I used to be, but I don't put Roman Reigns on the level of Hulk Hogan in terms of popularity. He's not, because Roman Reigns is not a cultural phenomenon. He's very popular in the wrestling community, but there aren't people who are not wrestling fans wearing Roman Reigns t-shirts, right? He's not appearing in movies that have nothing to do with that kind of stuff, right? So to me, you've just set yourself up to, you're not extending this out to anybody else, right? You're not, I'm not going to say I was a big fan when Karl Malone or Dennis Rodman or whatever would show up. It was interesting, but it was so contrived also that it was just dumb, right? But to me, a 3-year run is also pretty contrived.
Well, I hear what you're saying with the Roman Reigns. If you are a hardcore fan, you're watching week to week. When Roman doesn't wrestle week to week, right? And when he does come out and the music plays and he's got his bloodline faction, it's pretty exciting. Like I gotta say, like in the Montreal crowd, they all hated him, but they love to hate him. Like you can't get your eyes off the guy, and he's done really well as a champion. But if you think back to the 80s and Hulkamania running wild, and everybody talking about Hulk Hogan and going across cartoons and rock music and pop culture and everything else, not even close. I don't know if we're ever going to see another Hulk Hogan like that. You think about wrestling today. Wrestling today does not exist if not for Hulk Hogan, the way
right.
he changed the landscape. Absolutely.
Yeah, but look, you say that you don't think that that's going to happen, but look in the last 15 or 20 years, The Rock, absolutely. While not the level of the Hulk in terms of the broad appeal to everything and kind of touching everything, The Rock was almost that popular. John Cena. Everybody knew who John Cena was and is, right? But nobody outside of wrestling knows who Roman Reigns is, right? You say to the average person on the street, Roman Reigns, and they're going to go, I don't know who that maybe I've heard of him at some point, but I don't know anything about him. I mean, I'm not completely ignorant about current wrestling. I have no idea of Roman's backstory, none whatsoever, because I just don't care. He's not intriguing to me, right? So I think that, yeah, you're not ever probably going to see something like Hulk again. I just don't think. I also don't think that part of the reason you're never going to see that again is just the fractalization of the media and all of the choices out there, right? Hulk could dominate. You've got him on a cable channel when cable just started, but then he's making appearances on regular TV. He's doing movies. he's doing Saturday morning cartoons, but still there's only a relatively limited amount of stuff he has to cover before he's sort of ubiquitous, right? Even Cena, there's some point where Cena can't be on everything, right?
Let me ask you this much because you got me intrigued right now into these thinkings. Now, The Rock and Cena, the difference between them and Hulk Hogan, in my estimation, is this much. Uh, they became bigger than Hogan in some ways, but they left wrestling a lot sooner. Why? Because their careers took off outside of wrestling. Hulk Hogan, while he did great in Rocky as Thunder Lips and not as great as Mr. Nanny, for example, but and the movie with Zeus, was it Over the Top or what? No,
Over the
that was
top, yeah.
was
No,
Over the
is it?
Top. No, no,
Was it?
that was Stallone. Whatever the movie was with Zeus. I can't remember now. That's how great it was. But thinking back now, how many Hogan movies bombed and Hogan had to go back to wrestling, to his bread and butter, because it didn't
Right.
exist. If Hogan's movies had taken off the way Cena and The Rock's movies took off, I think you see Hogan out of wrestling a lot sooner. So on the same token, if Rock and Cena, their careers don't take off in the movies, they're staying in wrestling longer. So I think in some ways they even became bigger stars, but they're outside of wrestling for so long now. Like Cena comes in and makes his yearly appearance. You can't see me. Great. The Rock is gone. Like The Rock, the big thing with The Rock, they're ready to push was in WrestleMania because he's related to Roman Reigns, and for him to fight Roman for the head of the bloodline, but does not appear that that's going to happen because The Rock is just too busy owning things, running things, and being successful. So, in many ways, I can tell you, Rock and Cena, in my estimation, are successful movie stars. A la Hulk Hogan was not.